Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
Evening edition. We
Ooh,
I
at
know
night.
at night. I'm pretty sure we've made this joke at least three times before when we've recorded at
hmm
night. But sometimes it's the getting started that's the hard part. It's like we get there eventually, but just like that initial what the hell is going to come out of my mouth right now? I don't know. And I feel like we talked about this a lot before too. But we used to plan out okay, what do we have to, and now we're just like ready, click record, okay, and then it's a
We'll figure
surprise
it
for
out.
everyone. Yeah.
We'll figure it out. And I did think I was looking up at when this is released. Happy Valentine's Day to anyone who celebrates.
Oh, happy
This
Valentine's
comes out
Day.
on Valentine's Day. I have neutral feelings about the day in general. I
Mm-hmm.
used to really love it. And then as I've gotten older, just not really a fan. But a lot of people do love it. And so I hope everyone has a great day in whatever way
Yes.
you wish to celebrate.
Yeah, definitely. And to plug our Patreon, if you want to celebrate by gifting your significant other a subscription, you can definitely do that because we have an exciting Valentine's Day episode that's coming out this month. So if you guys want to
Mm-hmm.
learn about the dark history of Valentine's Day told to you by our significant others, you can go to
Yeah.
patreon.com/caffeinated crimes for that little treat that will be coming out next Thursday, I believe.
Yeah. At some point,
I don't have a calendar in front
whenever
of
we
me.
get it out.
This
If
month
we do the
before the end
last
of February,
Thursday, yeah, it will be the 23rd. So about a week and 2 days from now.
which we might try to get it out early for you to be closer to Valentine's Day. Maybe.
Yeah. It
We'll see
depends
what
when the guys
happens.
record. We'll see.
Yeah.
Very
They're in
excited to
charge of
see how
that.
that
So,
goes.
yes, we gave them a script. And so they are telling you guys the story using our script and inserting their own commentary. So I think it'll be super fun. So I definitely think it's worth that $5 a month if you guys want to check it out.
Yeah, but that'll be exciting. And yeah, as always, you can head over there at Patreon, get a bunch of extra goodies.
Yeah. And I think the only true crimey update that I just happened to see on Twitter right before we started this is that there was a couple in New York that was found dead in their home with 125 cats.
A lot of
Um
cats.
that's a lot of cats. I told Courtney this before we started recording and she's like, I can't even get my two cats to get along. Like how in the world?
No, like they fight all the time. I mean, they're not like vicious fighting, but they're like hissing at each other and like chasing each other and like swatting at each other. And I'm
Yeah.
like, add 123 extra cats on top of that. There's no way all
Right?
those cats get along. I would I would be miserable. Literally today I was about to kill my younger cat because she wouldn't stop scratching at the wires and trying to play with the
Yep.
glasses on the bar cart.
Is your
But
cat my toddler? Because they sound exactly the same.
so I always said this, and like I know people get really mad and offended and whatever, but I always say the younger cat
Hmm.
is testing me for a child. Like
Yeah, for
we
sure.
had to baby proof all of our outlets on the upstairs because she tried to stick her fingers in them. Like she wakes us up in the middle of the night, like
Uh-huh.
just paws at stuff for attention, like
Yep.
literally insane. And like we should have named her Tinkerbell because if she doesn't get attention, she'll die. And she's so needy. And it's just like crazy.
Yep.
Like, especially when we had to baby proof everything because she was like
Yeah.
putting her claws in it. I was like, is this a child? Like, literally, she's like a child.
Yeah. We just had to get I didn't even know they made these because none of my baby proofing ever made me realize this was a thing that was needed, but not like the outlet covers, but like not the outlet cover that goes in the empty outlet, but a cover for an outlet that has something plugged into it so they can't unplug it. So it's like a
Oh.
giant box that like screws in over it. Because the way my daughter's room is, there's like nowhere to like put in her baby monitor where like I can see her in the crib, but she can't reach it to unplug it. So that's been
hmm
her new thing at 5 a.m. is the sound starts going off because it's disconnected because she's reached over and unplugged it. So
She's
we
like,
had
quit
to,
watching me.
I know she's like, you
This is the
creeper,
old school
turn
days
this
now,
off.
mom. Like, quit it. I'm trying to sleep.
So yeah, so that's what that made me think of when you said playing with the wires. Also have a funny cat story that I just thought of having this conversation. I was on a Zoom call with a bunch of my coworkers the other day, and the lady that was talking, like her cat in the background was like going crazy. Like he like jumped
Mhm.
up on like 4 different things and was like running across like the top of the bookshelf and then would like jump down, like literally just like zoomies in the background behind her while she is like talking so seriously, and everyone was cracking up and it was really funny. One of my coworkers also thought it was a rat instead of a cat, so she was very happy when she found out that it was just a cat because it scared her. And so we were joking after she finished talking, we are like talking about her cats, and she's like, "Oh well, I'm just happy that like they're all getting along today." Because she said that her cats had like gotten into a fight the day before, and like literally as soon as she finished saying that, you're and like you're like hissing and like all this in the
Oh
background.
yeah.
She's just like, she's the sweetest lady, and she's like, and she finishes up her sentence, and then she's like, "I'm gonna go take care of that," and turns off her camera. It was
Yeah,
so
there's
good.
like
Like,
we have like a supervisor meeting like every Monday,
uh-huh.
and me and one other girl both have cats. And it's like every time I talk, Nova thinks I'm like talking to her, I guess, or she
Yeah.
needs to come and check it out. And like her cat always goes crazy like when we get on a call. So like sometimes we'll both just like hold our cats up to the camera and be like, "Hi, friends." Like, and then like our other coworker's son like is like, "Wait, I want to see the cats." Like it's just chaos like half the time. Like babies and cats basically.
Working from home is great. There's just so
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
It's never dull.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I think that's all we had to get started today before we get into today's episode. So in continuing with our celebration of Black History Month for the month of February, we do want to keep highlighting some Black activists in history. So our sources for today were the documentary The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson, the documentary Pay It No Mind, The Life and Times of Marsha P. Johnson, as well as a women's history article and a Women in American Story article. So Marsha P. Johnson was born on August 24th, 1945 in Elizabeth, New Jersey. She was the fifth of 7 children born to Malcolm Michael Sr. and Alberta Claiborne. Marsha was assigned male at birth. You can find her birth name online, but we are not into using dead names on this podcast. So it's out there if you would like to look into it for whatever reason, but we're not going to use it here. Her father, Malcolm, worked at General Motors assembly line in Linden, New Jersey, and her mother, Alberta, worked as a housekeeper. She attended Mount Timon African Methodist Episcopal Church and remained a practicing Christian her entire life. Starting at the age of 5, Marsha loved to dress up in clothing typically made for women and like wearing dresses and that sort of thing. She felt that this most identified like with her sense of self. She did stop for a while due to some bullying from the other children and a sexual assault she experienced by a 13-year-old boy. So immediately following graduating from Thomas A. Edison High School, Marsha moved to New York City. So here she returned to dressing in women's clothing and adopted the name Marsha P. Johnson. And the P stood for Pay It No Mind because she is just a badass. So Marsha would describe herself as a gay person, a transvestite, and a drag queen. She did use she, her pronouns. We do want to say that the term transgender wasn't really used widely until after her death. So like those are the terms that she had used at that time to describe herself. And like we're not really sure how she would have described herself today, but those are the terms that she used at the time that she was alive. So she did still stay in contact with her family, but like it was a little bit strained. However, she did deeply love her family. And at this time in history, police would still arrest people for dressing in drag or being gay. The rights for the LGBTQ plus community like were very limited, even more so than they are today. So it was obviously a difficult time for people like Marsha. So having a difficult time finding employment, she did turn to sex work to make ends meet, and she was often abused by clients and arrested by the police. She also did not have a permanent home, so she would bounce around from friends' houses and couches. She would sometimes stay at hotels, restaurants, movie theaters, just kind of wherever she could at the time. She also found work around this time waiting tables and performing in drag shows. And in a 1992 interview, Marsha said, "I was nobody from Nowheresville until I became a drag queen." And Marsha was known for being happy and kind, and she would just like talk to everyone like she knew them, and she just really was like nice to people without an agenda. Like you knew that she was being genuine.
And especially in New York City, and especially at this time, I feel like people in New York City are just usually not like very open or nice. They're
Yeah.
kind of just not that they're mean, it's just they're kind of like they see shit all the time and they're just like going on their way. But like Marsha
Yeah.
would just like talk to everyone, and it wasn't like she was trying to like get something from them. She just
Yeah.
like genuinely cared about everyone she came across.
Yeah. Just enjoyed like being around people and learning about people and, So not long after moving to New York City, Marsha met Sylvia Rivera, who was 12 years old at the time. Sylvia was a Puerto Rican transgender woman, and they instantly became friends. And Sylvia really viewed Marsha as just like a mother to her. Marsha really encouraged Sylvia to like be herself and love herself and her true identity. Marsha loved to wear colorful, fun outfits that were made from like thrift store items or discarded items, and she often wore a crown of flowers. So a real turning point in Marsha's life and her activism was in regards to the Stonewall Inn. So I'm sure many people have heard of this. This is like a huge turning point at this point in history. So the Stonewall Inn was just like this nice campy bar that was owned by the mafia because gay people were not allowed in bars at this time. So the mafia would open bars like the Stonewall Inn and then pay off the cops to stay out. So they're like, okay, we'll run this. We'll make sure that you get your money so you don't come in here and these gay people have somewhere to just go and enjoy themselves and be like a safe place. So on June 28th, 1969, the police did raid the Stonewall Inn and started arresting a lot of the patrons who were mostly gay men. So Marsha and Sylvia showed up around 2 a.m. And Sylvia recalls like how it was just chaos and like Molotov cocktails were being thrown. The Stonewall Inn was on fire, just like pure chaos that they're walking into. And Marsha recalled in an interview that the place was already on fire and there was a raid already. The riots had already started. So people were in the street turning over cars, blocking traffic, like screaming. And there are like some competing stories on Marsha's role this night, but it is clear that like she was on the front line. So in some of these retellings, like she started the uprising by throwing a shot glass in a mirror. In others, it said that she like climbed a lamppost and dropped a heavy purse on a police car, which shattered the windshield. Either way, obviously, like we said, she played a crucial role in this. Marsha really felt like she just had nothing to lose. Like she and many others were not only angry about this police raid, but just the general oppression and fear that they experienced here every day. So after this, Marsha and Sylvia started leading protests as well on their own.
Yeah, because if you think around this time, you do get arrested, for being gay, for, being in a relationship with someone of the same sex. And also, Marsha and Sylvia are both minorities as well. So, like,
Yeah,
any oppression they're feeling is like doubled, tripled, everything. Like,
exactly.
such a hard time to be around.
Yeah. So like we said, the raid on Stonewall Inn really started the gay rights movement, and the first gay pride parade took place in 1970. And a few new gay rights groups also emerged at this time. So there was the Gay Liberation Front, which was a more radical organization, and Gay Activist Alliance, which was a more like moderate and focused spinoff group. So Marsha was involved in the early days, but became frustrated at the lack of inclusion of transgender and LGBTQ plus people of color from the movement. So like Courtney just said, like these women have like multiple layers going on here, and a lot of these movements would exclude them.
Yeah, and like a lot of interviews, they were like, they forgot the T. Like, don't forget the
Yeah,
T. Like,
exactly.
they were just kind of focusing not on that group at all.
Yeah. And she would actively speak out about the transphobia in the early gay rights movement. So Marsha and Sylvia decided to create STAR, which stood for Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. And this was later renamed to Street Transgender Action Revolutionaries. As we mentioned earlier, the term transgender was not really used at that time, and transvestite was not used in a derogatory way by those who identified as that. So STAR was an organization dedicated to sheltering young transgender individuals who were shunned by their families. And it was a part of the People's Revolution, and it was time for them to show the world that they were human beings as well. They also started Star House to help keep young transgender people off the street and give them a safe place to stay. Marsha and Sylvia had both experienced homelessness themselves at a young age, so they wanted to give these youth a better life. So the first Star House was in the back of an abandoned truck in Greenwich Village, and the second was in a dilapidated building, which they tried to fix up, but they were kicked out 8 months later.
And throughout the 1970s, Marsha continued to grow in the movement and become a more visible and prominent member. So a 1972 interview, Marsha said her ambition was to see gay people liberated and free and to have equal rights that other people have in America. She also said in another interview, as long as gay people don't have their rights all across America, there is no reason for celebration. And around this time, she also began performing with a drag group called Hot Peaches, which I just love that name. I think it's such a cool name, Hot
Right?
Peaches.
It's so good.
And she was electric on stage. Like people loved her. There's even like a story of like one time, like one of the guys who like helped put on the show was like, "You're not singing this right, like sing it this way." And so one night she sang it like perfectly, nailed it, and then the next night she butchered it, and he was like, "What happened?" And she was like, "They love it even when I get it wrong. Like it doesn't matter. They love me. It's
I
me. It's
love it.
fine."
Right.
So and she was very popular. And actually, artist Andy Warhol even included her in a series of prints in 1975 entitled Ladies and Gentlemen. Victoria Cruz, who's a fellow activist, even called her like the Rosa Parks of the gay rights movement. Other people have also called Sylvia Rivera this as well, but just kind of showing how important and prominent they were at the beginning of the gay rights movement. So she was also called Saint Marsha in Greenwich Village. And like as we said before, she was just like a kind and generous person. And like many of her friends just told stories of how she would ask for money on the street. You know, she'd be like, "Hey, can you give money to like a queen in need, like a dying queen? I need money." And she'd get the money and she would just turn around and just give it to someone else who needed it. She'd be like, "Here you go, like go get some food, whatever." So she was just very selfless and just a really big part of this community.
Like truly embodied like the concept of giving back what you get, you know?
Mm-hmm. And in 1980, she was even invited to ride in the lead car of the Gay Pride Parade in New York City. And while the 1970s brought a lot of activism and popularity, Marsha also experienced hardships around this time. She did experience a number of mental health breakdowns and spent time in and out of some psychiatric hospitals. She also continued to engage in sex work to make money, and she was arrested many times. Like some reports say she was even arrested close to 100 times. Marsha said in an interview the police would beat her when they arrested her. She said they would use force like they were dealing with a murderer. She was like, they would act like I had just killed someone, not just had sex with someone. Like they were very
Yeah.
brutal to her. And again, being gay, being transgender, being Black, the police were horrible at that time too.
Yeah.
All of those
Like
communities.
definitely, exactly. Definitely treated her worse than they would have treated other people in that same position who committed the same crime.
Yeah, and Sylvia also had many hardships. She actually ended up leaving the movement around 1973 after many times when she tried to speak at parades and events, she would honestly just be booed and disrespected on stage. Like they didn't want to hear from her, even at these, gay rights parades. Like they would boo her because she was transgender.
Ugh.
So, as we see, the gay rights movement is still very far away of being also inclusive of transgender rights. And I think even today, we're still struggling a lot with that.
Yeah.
So, Marsha worked hard to be very inclusive of other people and help anyone who needed it. And there's, again, just so many stories of her going to people who were sick or in need and just helping any way she could. She didn't have a lot of anything, but she would help just any way she could. And in 1990, Marsha was diagnosed with HIV, and she did speak publicly about her diagnosis and how people should not be afraid of the disease. And then on July 6, 1992, Marsha Johnson was found dead in the Hudson River near Christopher Street. She was 46 years old. So police did say it was a death by suicide, but the community does not believe so and believe there was some kind of foul play. So 1992 was actually the worst year on record for anti-LGBTQ plus violence, according to the New York Anti-Violence Project. So this whole year, there were a total of 1,300 crimes that were reported of bias crime, even some like from the police. So
Ugh.
a very, very hard year.
Yeah.
Police did later reclassify her death as a drowning from undetermined cause, but they refused to investigate further into her death. So many were wondering because a witness who was there at the scene when Marsha was pulled from the water said there had been a hole in her head. And so people were like, well, where did that come from? How did that
Exactly.
happen? And Marsha's family also asked to see the body and they were denied. They were said, like, no, you can't see it, which is very odd. A lot of times, like, the
Yeah.
family identifies the bodies and can see the bodies, but they were like, no, you can't see it, which a lot of people felt was very weird.
Yeah, definitely.
And the police just kept using various things to point to death by suicide, such as like giving away things. But Victoria Cruz says that she was just that type of person. She was like, if she was on the street and someone was like, hey, I really like your scarf, she would just give it to them. Or like, I really like, whatever you're wearing, she would just give it to them. She was just a giving person. So she's like, maybe there was like reports of her giving stuff away, but I think that was just who she was and not pointing to, her preparing
Yeah.
to die by suicide.
Like that was just a normal part of like her character and personality.
Yeah. Many friends took it upon themselves to investigate what happened. And there's a lot of conflicting stories on when Marsha was last seen. So her roommate, Randy Wicker, said he last saw her on July 2nd, but there is reports of someone seeing her on July 4th. And another witness saw two men following her around at 4 a.m. on the 5th. And her body was found on the 6th. So this is like just the day before she was found, like someone saw two men kind of following her. So many believe this could be evidence this was not a death by suicide and that she was being targeted. So Kitty Rotolo was supposed to meet up with Marsha on July 4th. She'd known Marsha ever since she was like 13 or 14, and they were supposed to meet and go to Annville around 2 or 3 a.m., but Marsha never showed up. And later that night, she went to the Stroll in Greenwich Village, which was kind of just like an area that a lot of the community would go to around that time. And she had heard some girls say to watch out because a car was driving around. And they actually told her that Marsha had gotten in that car and they said, like, hey, like, girl, don't get in that car. Don't do it. So this is another kind of did something happen that night?
Yeah. Like definitely several situations that would lead you to think that it may not be a death by suicide.
Yeah. And a lot of people were saying, like, if this was any other community, if it was a leader like this found under suspicious circumstances, like the city would be putting resources behind it to solve it. Marsha was also kind of scared of the mob and like the mafia. Like, as we mentioned before, like the mafia usually like liked to buy places where a lot of the gay community can come to and kind of pay off the police, which also, dealing with the mob and mafia gets pretty muddy as well and scary.
Yeah, like they weren't doing this purely out of a loving motive to provide this place for them.
No, they were doing it for money.
Yeah.
So Randy, as we mentioned, who's her roommate, had actually been taking on the mob about the Christopher Street Festival because they were the ones like holding it. And he was like very upset because he's like, why are you guys making all the money and like not the community? And there'd actually been a phone call to Randy to like tell them like, hey, leave them alone or what happened to Marsha will happen to him. So that's kind of suspicious as well of like, did something happen?
Yeah.
So we do know that Marsha went into the water alive since they know that she did die by drowning. So the one of the documentaries did speak to a medical examiner. So the medical examiner was kind of saying like the conditions in which she went into the water, that's like police investigation. Like medical examiners don't really comment on that. But he could say there was no injury or impact injury to any part of her body, and there was no like fracture to her skull or frame. So the hole in the head the witness had seen, he was like, that could have just happened after death. You're in the water, there's floating debris.
Yeah.
It's July, decomposition, like it can just happen. Like it all kind of looked normal for what, like the timeline, basically. Like bodies just kind of start breaking apart faster in warmer water. So nothing to him was like, this is suspicious.
Yeah.
But again, this doesn't mean that someone could not have been like chasing her or following her or forced her into the water, anything like that. But if that was the case, that would be classified as a homicide. But the police, again, are not really investigating it. So they don't really care, honestly, is what it
Yeah.
seems. Also in the documentary, a lot of retired NYPD officers who were like around that time are very hostile when talking about the decision to not investigate further. Like Victoria Cruz like called a lot of them and they'd be like, quit talking to me. And then the next person was like, I know you're calling around. Like they obviously were talking to each other that
Wow.
someone was like contacting, like very hostile, very like, I'm not talking about it. No, it's closed. Don't talk to me, whatever, basically.
Yeah.
So in 2012, police did reopen her case, but there's really been no updates on what happened to Marsha. So they reopened it, but there's not really been anything coming forward. And in 2019, New York City announced that Marsha P. Johnson, along with Sylvia Rivera, would be the subject of a monument commissioned by the Public Arts Campaign called She Built New York City. The monument will be the first in New York City to honor transgender women. And in 2020, New York State named a waterfront park in Brooklyn for Marsha. So she does remain one of the most recognized and admired LGBTQ plus advocates. So Marsha P. Johnson was a Black transgender activist, which, as we have said, would have been very hard in the 70s and 80s. And despite the oppression and the brutality she faced, she still showed constant kindness and grace, even to those who were opposing her. And she did face so much oppression, but tried to continue every day to make it a better place. Kind of similar to Ida B. Wells, I think, as well, where it's like she was facing so many obstacles, but still was doing everything in her power to try and leave the world a better place than she found it.
Like really one of those people that in the time that they're doing the work that they're doing, they know that they're probably not going to benefit from it, but they're hoping that someone else will. You know what I mean? So like we see so many times like people are only willing to advocate for things that like they personally will benefit from. And she had to have known at that time that like it wasn't going to happen in her lifetime, but she still wanted to fight that fight for those that would come after her.
And so many times of just being arrested and being abused.
Yeah.
And like with Sylvia, like in one of the documentaries, like they showed footage of her talking on a stage and everyone at the gay rights parade booing her and just telling her to get off the stage. So even by a community that's supposed to accept them,
Yeah.
feeling that oppression. And, you know, this is a lot talking about Marsha's struggles with being transgender and the oppression from that. And that gets brought up a lot because she is an icon in the gay rights movement, but that doesn't even like begin to touch the surface of what she faced as a Black woman in New York City. So that just goes even deeper, even further. There's no telling how much oppression and brutality and just awful things she endured.
It's the same thing like we talked about last week with Ida B. Wells, that like you have this women's rights movement, but they're like, oh, no, just white women. And then now we see it the same thing this week where you have this LGBT movement, but then it's like, oh, well, not really the T and also not really people of color and also only these various. And it's like, it took so long for us to have this like intersectionality where we're actually paying attention to the layers that make people who they are and contribute to the oppression that they face. And obviously it's still not perfect and there's still tons of work that needs to be done in that area, but so much at this time when you look back and you're like, just so many groups of people that were excluded that it's like, oh, well, your group finally got rights. And it's like, well, no, part of our group did, but I didn't until this many years later because I had these other contributing factors. Like,
yeah, it's rough.
but what an amazing woman. Like, what an
incredible,
absolute, like, badass,
absolutely
just
beautiful,
like,
incredible. Just, she seemed like such a ray of sunshine, even with how much she faced of just, I don't know. It's very inspiring. Like when you're having a bad day and you're just like, but look at this woman who did all of this despite all these obstacles. Like,
amazing. So we hope you guys enjoyed this next installment of these amazing Black women in history. That being said, Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is kind of relevant to this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So Kevin and I have been trying to get caught up on shows that we were behind on. So we just got caught up on American Horror Story. And the newest season was called NYC, and it's a lot about really mostly about like gay men and a few gay women like in the 80s, especially at the height of the HIV/AIDS epidemic.
Yeah.
So it was kind of hard to watch because I feel like a lot of American Horror Story is like fake. It's like vampires and witches and the apocalypse, and you can kind of detach, but this was just very real, kind of.
It's like,
So it
oh,
was a
those are
tough
the real
watch,
monsters
but
here. Like,
yeah, like
yeah.
Kevin looked at me today and was like, "Are you okay?" Because I was absolutely sobbing, like sobbing at one of the episodes because it was like, because this is just like real life. Like this is not what I signed up for. But I think it was important. And Ryan Murphy, who is the creator, is also a gay man who is probably wanting to like recognize all this and kind of show that side of it. But it was a very important season, I think, and it was a little bit of a tough watch, but that's my perk of the week is that we're caught up on American Horror Story, and
nice.
Yeah. And it's kind of relevant to this episode today.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
First of all, I can't believe that we did not have the same perk of the week, Courtney, because Courtney and I ran a 5K together yesterday, and I'm just shocked that that was not Courtney's perk of the week. Okay, but
surprise to no one.
I'm pretty sure we like talked about this back in like our very first episode of this podcast about how I was trying to make you a runner with me.
I'm about to get back into running.
We're doing week. Should I put it out there into the universe?
I am not doing a 10K in March.
No,
I'll
not
tell you
that
that
one.
right now. Okay. I'll tell you that right now. We might be doing a half marathon.
I was just a might, because I was gonna say once we put it out there, it's happening.
I believe we are, but
okay.
You know, last time a half marathon was supposed to happen, the universe was like,
well, I don't knock on wood. I don't think anyone's getting pregnant this year, but you know, I mean, things happen. So
I'm not planning on it. Definitely not planning on that.
Courtney's like, if that happens, I got bigger issues than not running this half marathon. Yeah. But yeah, hopefully Courtney and I will be running a half marathon together before the end of 2023. But back to my perk of the week is that yesterday I ran my first 5K back here in Knoxville, which I think also was mine and Courtney's first 5K together ever.
Yeah, I guess that would be it.
I don't think we've ever done one together. But yeah, it was a fun little like Valentine's Day one. They had like little chocolate treats and stuff at the end. But yeah, I was excited to do my first race here with my beautiful friends and my aunt, and
yeah, I was mostly there for support for my friend who wants to run a 5K every month, but we didn't really run. We mostly walked and gossiped. But
you know, you still did it though. Because that's all that matters.
It was very cold. My lungs were not prepared for that nonsense.
It was like, what, 20 degrees when we started? Yeah. I was wearing 4 shirts, I think. Because I think I had
the blue one, you had the gray one, you had the red one, and then the pink one. Yes. Because I had to fix it like 3 times.
Yes, Courtney had to fix my layers multiple times before we got started. Because, you know, they get all bunched up, and then I'm like, I need them to be, you know, all fixed. So Courtney had to fix them. And then I realized like 10 minutes in when they started bunching up, and I was like, damn it, I need Courtney to fix my layers mid-run here.
And then I was back there not running. But yeah, I'm gonna try to get back into running. I'm gonna finish my program. Only have 2 more days of it, and then I guess I'm gonna start running.
And then hopefully the weather will start to improve a little bit, and that will make it a lot easier because
the cold is hard for me. I'm like a recovering asthmatic. Like I used to have bad asthma, but it's like better. But
yeah,
when I get sick or if I try to start like exercising in the cold, like it's like, oh no, we're back, you know. It's like when that alcoholic takes one sip, we're back, baby, we're back, and it's like, okay, here we go.
Like, here we go. So yeah, like my asthma's the same way, where it's like I only had issues when I was pregnant. It's like the only time that like in the last 10 years, because there's a lot going on with your organs shifting and things, pressure on your lungs. And so that's the only time. I saw a
video today on TikTok of like what your body goes through. And I was like, that is, I mean, it's beautiful. It's amazing. It's incredible, but that is fucking terrifying.
It
Like,
is wild.
don't make it like I'm saying it's gross.
Yeah,
It's
no.
beautiful. It's a miracle that we can like create a baby from like basically cells. I don't know, like an egg and a sperm.
But it's horrifying. Yeah.
But it's absolutely horrifying to see a woman's organs move.
Yeah, it is.
Terrifying.
It's crazy. And it's crazy that like we're going on a whole rabbit hole here. Anyway, but just like how things go back in different places, like that it's just never the same. But yeah, that's the only time I've had an issue with my asthma recently. But like Andrew was filling out some kind of paperwork the other day and he was like, do you have asthma? Because like it's come up before. And I was like, for what? I was like, what are you filling out? And he was like, my life insurance. I was like, then no, I don't.
I do like, not.
Depends on what it is. Like if it's something where it would benefit me, then yes, because I technically do have that diagnosis. But if no, I don't.
Yeah, that is the thing. Like I usually only click it if it's like, do you have or have you ever had? So if it's like, do you currently have? I'm like, no, exactly. Not really. I'm like, no, it's fine. But in the past, your girl was a bit wheezy.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, so bringing that full circle, if you guys want to talk to us about all of those things, like we said, we're not listing them all anymore. They are in the show notes. You guys know how to find us. We've only been doing this for 150 something episodes, 55. I think. Wow. Okay. Okay, cool. So you guys know where to find us, but like we plugged at the beginning and we are going to plug it again here. We do have a super fun Patreon episode this month. If you want to hear our significant others telling you all about the history of Valentine's Day, and why we celebrate it and some of the weird things that led to this holiday, that is patreon.com/caffeinated crimes. We do have other fun perks over there as well. So definitely check that out. We have tiers ranging from $3 a month to $20 a month. You can leave and come back. We've had people do that, like hang out for a little bit and then disappear and then come back.
I'll probably try and post again on Instagram, like our little breakdown, so that people can see it if they're interested. Because we haven't posted that in a while. So
yeah, that's probably
I might do that here soon. That'll be a sometime the next few weeks project for me. I'm not going to make any promises on any deadlines on that because I don't know.
We do what we can around here. Okay, we're very busy women, and we try our best
intentions. And then my brain goes 40 million other different places, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I was going to do this very simple thing. Didn't do it at all.
Yep, been there.
But if you could also just leave us 5 stars on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen, that would be great. If you're going to leave less than 4. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't. Or you could like message us and we'll see how we feel about your complaints and whether we can improve it to a 5-star or, just depends what your complaints
are. Or if maybe we're just not the podcast for you, because that could be it.
That happens too. There's podcasts I listen to where I'm like, not my thing. And I'm not going to leave a bad star because it's not my thing.
Exactly.
Another thing I've seen podcasts say, don't leave a 1-star based on one episode.
That's a good point. But also a thing I just heard on the podcast. This is a very meta conversation. Anyway, the thing I just heard on a podcast that said that even negative reviews like bump you up, like then like your total number of reviews. So basically they like shit talked Taylor Swift, and so they got a ton of like 1-star reviews of like Swifties that were mad at them, and so they're like, it's okay, keep them coming. Like it bumps us up on the charts because it's the number of reviews that matter. So everyone sees like what your average rating is. So people may be like, oh, I don't want to listen to a 3-star podcast or whatever, but you show up on more people's feeds because you have more reviews. So
you know what? Go ahead and review us, whatever. That's fine. Anyway, you know what? We gotta end this. We're rambling too much. Everyone, go have a cup of coffee
and don't commit a crime.